How you doing, everyone? Massive video here going through all the potential options heading into round 13 and then a little look into potentially some guys you'd like to pick up in 14, looking forward to round 17 and beyond. And just before we get started, I just want to say there's a few people I'm seeing in the Facebook groups, in my Discord as well, that are just doing trades at the moment, that for a guy that's not playing this week for another guy that's, got a bye this week. And just be aware that there's every chance that injuries can happen at training and all that kind of stuff. I feel like if you're making that sideways trade, like I've seen like a Tuolangi one, 412k into a 390k player. It's just like a very sideways one. We can just do that next week. We still get 4 trades next week, so you're not going to use all of them at once. So just be aware of doing that. Obviously, I can understand if it's someone that's like a 600k guy and you're trading them down to a cheapie to be able to upgrade elsewhere. I can see that, but I would just try and hold off as much as you can heading into next week. And this, as I said, guys, big video is going to be. If you are enjoying it, please tell your friends. Get this out to as many people as possible. Yes, that means they might beat you this week, but if you're listening to me regularly, I think you're going to be doing pretty well. We'll start off with the hookers, and we've got 4 guys here who you could potentially pick up this week, and then I'm just going to speak about Reid briefly as well as a potential round 14 option, unless he's going to be getting into Origin, which is unlikely when you got Ben Hunt and also Harry Grant there. I think Reid is a solid one heading into round 14. If you're needing to upgrade a Starling, or you're wanting to do improve that hooking position, if you trade out Harry, then Reid could be that guy. So let's move on to the Footy Stats page there, and we'll go through Appy as a starter. So him at 681k, he's priced just under that 50 mark, which is where he's averaging at the moment at 48.6. And the main issue with him is just when he plays that little bit less minutes, sometimes he can get the mid 30s or the high 20s score. He's got 28 and a 27. But since those 2 weeks, he's played 2 80-minute games and 2 65-minute games essentially, and averaging really, really nice scores in the high 50s. So 72, 47, 66, and 55. And with all the guys out this week, you'll see Appy play 80. We should be doing. Mitch Kenny will come on and play a bit of a middle role, you'd say. I think would be the smartest option for them. And Kenny can come in and help out at dummy half as well. But Appy is definitely a solid option over the next bunch of weeks. And at 48.6, he's probably not going to be a clear keeper option in the hooking position, but he would be a pretty nice second option. So if you had him at like your 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th man come the end of the year, it wouldn't be the worst idea. So I see Appy really ramping up, heading towards the back end of the season now and heading in towards finals. Obviously, it's a while away, but he's got plenty of work to do over this Origin period with a lot of the guys playing extra games and stuff like that. So I think Appy, it'll be his turn to really step up and do really well. We've obviously seen what he's done in previous years. 2020 absolutely killed it. Last year was up and down a little bit with some of his scores, and obviously missed a bunch of games as well. But overall, he's a very, very good player who has the potential to hit 60s and 70s. So Appy, definitely a solid option for you this week. Rhys Robson, obviously that bit more expensive, and the main worry with him over the last few weeks, or last week especially, was that Jake Granville was going to come in and take a few minutes. And much to everyone that owns Robson, the happiness there is that he didn't come on and do that. Granville's on the bench again, but there's a great chance that Rhys plays the 80 minutes. And I think you can see pretty much every week since round 6, he's played the 80 and got really good scores. So I think he's someone that could average 50 to 55 there, and a 728, he's definitely a solid option. You've got 19 out of the top 100 that have him, and with Appy, it's very, very low. So if you want a little bit of a pod who can get you the 70s and 80s and help you win games, for example, in head-to-head, or obviously improve your ranks in overall, then Appy might be a guy. Just about that 47k less than Robson, for example. So that's the theory there. Jeremy Marshall-King is a sneaky one as well. Just thought I'd mention him. Averaging 47, priced accordingly. He's been fairly solid. Obviously, minutes have been a little bit up and down across the season so far. He's had a random one with 48, a bunch with 70, and had finally played the 80 minutes last week. So anywhere 70 plus for him, he can obviously have some decent scores. He has scored 3 tries, and they're mainly the games that he's done really well. If we're going to go for someone in this price bracket, I would be going for Appy personally, but I just wanted to mention Jeremy as a solid option if you wanted to pick him up. I just think he's a little bit underneath what Appy can produce on a week-to-week basis, so that's why I wouldn't pick him personally. All right, Connor Watson. So we got the cheaper option of 566, priced at 42 there, with a nice solid break even, the hooker and the mid position dual, which is nice. But you look at the last bunch of weeks here, And he's finally come off with 2 scores over 40. But the issue here is the minutes. So 46 minutes last week. He did score a try, and that's why a few people are thinking about him. The 53 minutes before that is okay. Just his PPM in that position isn't strong enough for me at the moment. He has 2 scores over 50 only. If we're picking him up, we want a bunch of scores over that 46, 47, 48, and the odd one in the 60s. And he's just not going to get that with the minutes, if that makes sense. So that's why I'd be steering clear of Connor. We just don't want a situation that we've had with Starling the last bunch of weeks. Obviously, he's not going to come on and play 20 minutes like Starling did. Well, you'd think so. Anyway, but definitely I think Appy's probably your best selection out of these 4. And I can understand why you would go for Robson as well. Because if you're picking up a guy in round 13, you're hopefully wanting to pick them up for the rest of the year. And that's the same with 14. You're picking them up 14, 15, 16. They're going to play 17, and then you want to hold them for the rest of it if you're picking up a gun. Otherwise, it feels like a bit of a waste if you bring in a guy for this week. The only reason you'd want to bring a guy in now for round 13 and then trade them out in round 17 is if you think that they can make money over the next 4 weeks. And they're a mid-range guy, or they're on the way up as a gun. They're a cash cow that can make money over the next 4, and then you can trade them out. That would be the only reason. Otherwise, you want them to be a keeper long-term, like Toho Harris. So 682, we get him under the 50 price, which is nice, the middle and the edge. I think he's a cracking captaincy option this week. So there's a few guys I'd be thinking about. Toho, Angus, if you want to go a little bit out there with the wing fullbacks, and you can go for like a Joey Manu. And then the halves position, there's really not too much, but we'll speak about that. Appy could be a sneaky one as well, but he has that opportunity to, potentially get a 30 as well, so 30 or 70, whereas Toho, he's going to be around that 50 mark, 50 to 60-ish at this stage of his career, and coming back from injury, finally played the 80 minutes and got 57 in base. So you're going to feel really safe having him as captain. He's probably going to be mine there. So I think he's a really, really important player this week to bring in. I had a few questions saying Toho or Angus Crichton. So Crichton's obviously 40k more expensive, but I think both of them can average pretty close to that 55 to 60 over the rest of the season. 55 obviously being safer, and 60 being on the upside. And Crichton's done that in the past for sure. So both of them going to be a great option. You just flip a coin, or if you have that extra 40k, then you can go for Gus. But either way, you'll be sweet with them. Both have normal break evens now. After obviously these aren't exactly correct, but after some decent weeks, they're doing well. And if you're looking at, I can't believe 46% of the top 100 have him now. So they did really well, and lucky with that. And obviously a big percentage have Toho also. So Crichton, last bunch of weeks has been where he's made his face known that he's back, baby. So last 4 weeks, 66, 60, 46, and 67. So you got 3 out of the 4 in the 60s, and another 62. So 4 out of the 5 weeks, he's been awesome. So you can expect that from him going forward. If he has a 46, it's like, okay, it's a bit of a tough one. He actually had a try-saver in that game too, but obviously meters were down and also tackles were down. So Crichton, great captaincy option as well. I'm personally going to try and bring him in this week if I can, and see what happens. And he's someone that you can just keep for the rest of the year. If he's out of the favour in the Origin, he's only going to miss 1 game over the next, whatever it is, 13 left. And I think he's a great option for anyone's side. So Crichton, lock him in. Other guys are a bit cheaper. You got Fisher Harris, who's a potential one if you want an extra, mid there. And I haven't mentioned Jackson in this group, which will I'll just pop that Word document up again. I didn't put Jackson in there. He's also an okay option, but just the worry that him being on the edge, I think I'm going to steer clear of him if I'm honest. But he has to be there as an option for sure. All right, Mr. Fisher Harris. So 45.5 average. You look at his recent 2 scores, a 65 and a 50. So really nice. The minutes have been down, and we want him to be back up in the mid 50 minutes. And even when he had that at the start of the year, he was a bit hit and miss. So he's someone that I don't feel super confident with if I'm picking him up in my side. I think you just go for the other guys. You got Nat Butcher, you've got Crichton, and you've also got Toho and these types of guys. I'd be going for them before I'd go for Fisher at this stage. We already spoke about Butcher last week, so I'm not going to add him in this as well. All right, Tarpany with 669 is his price, so 48.9 the average. And again, you're looking at his scores. The last 2 weeks really good, a 53 and a 64. The minutes have been nice, 54 and 62 there. Tackles and run meters have been his king. So the only issue with him is that he can have a bunch of 40s in his game. He does have the 50 and 60, but definitely has the 30s and 40s as well. So if you're looking for a bit of a roller coaster, then Joseph could be a man, but he's obviously a pod. If he has a bunch of good weeks carrying that team without Papali'i, for example, then he could do well. Corey Horseball, if you want the cheaper one, this could be your man. Last few weeks, he's played bigger minutes, so a 48 and a 52, and I doubt that this changes with the fact that, you got Elliott who's moving on next year. Horsball's their guy. He's been really, really consistent across the season. He's not one that misses many tackles, 1 to 2 a week, making good meters, the odd offload and tackles well. So Corey Horsball, a solid one. If he can get around that 50 minutes, his PPM has always been strong, just under that 1 there. And I think he can get high, scores in the high 40s and make a little bit of cash over this period. And, if he continues to get the minutes that he deserves, I think, then he could be getting closer to a 650, 700k kind of guy, averaging 47 to 50. But if it doesn't happen, then you can move him on in round 17. I'd be understandable. I could understand that. If you have the extra few trades, the 16, 17, 18, 19, then Horsball could be a sneaky one at a cheaper price. If you want to just straight swap, Stephen Crichton, a Josh King, these types of players, then you can get Horsball straight in. All right, we move to the halves, and we'll speak about them briefly. In terms of the mids and the edge, just guys I was thinking for next week, obviously Cam McInnes, we got Isaiah Papali'i as well, and then Clem and Frizz, all 4 guys that I think are solid. Obviously, after this round, don't have any buys. From there, we'll play the rest of the games pending injury or suspension. So that's something interesting to think about. With those guys, the halves, we're going to speak about Burton, Keary. We're speaking a bit about Sexton in general. And then thinking into round 14, we've got Adam Reynolds, Dylan Brown, Mitch Moses, and then Jerome Hughes. So all of those guys, I think, are solid ones to think about for next week if you're just trying to plan things out. That's why I wanted to pop them in this video to talk about them a little bit more. And then we can work it out and go through it a little bit further in round 14. But we'll start with Mr. Burton. So we spoke about him a bit the last bunch of weeks with how good he's been going. But scores of 52, 82, 44, 74, and 65. So a couple of tries in there, kicking the goals again, which is ideal for him for sure. And then getting a try assist in each and every one of those weeks with the good kick meters. So very, very nice scores this week. And if you're needing a centre or a half, then Burton could be your man. He's going to be a keeper in the centres at minimum, right? So that's where the biggest thing to think about with Burton is if you bring him in now, you're probably not going to move him on for the rest of the year. And if we're looking at teams they're coming up against, obviously Penrith this week with a weakened side. Round 14, it'll be interesting to see what Para's like with a few of their players out. Will they back up? How are they going to play? Then you got Tigers who are going to be, it's going to be a nice tussle, that one. You've got Cronulla who are scuffling a little bit at the moment. Bunnies have been okay, and you got the Titans, Knights, and we'll go from there. But overall, he's going to get better and better across the season. I think he's a solid option for anyone's side. Obviously, majority of people own him in that top 1,000 especially, which makes sense over the last bunch of weeks, picking him up or holding him the whole way through. And that's that with Burton. Keary, we spoke about him a few times recently, obviously, as well. But, really nice scores. Lowest score of a 43 over the last 6 weeks. So anything above that and at least holding price. And if he gets in the 50s, you're going to make money up until about that 700k mark. I think you can average 50 over the next bunch of weeks and could potentially be, again, that 15, 16, 17, 18th man in your squad as cover in the halves. If you've got Cleary, if you've got the DCE, then you could have Keary as your third, which is pretty cool, right? For a guy that's only going to miss 1 game in the next 13 weeks, I think it's a pretty solid one. It has that opportunity to potentially get the 60-odd. And he has scored no tries this year. And try assists have been okay. He's had a few good weeks recently, but overall the attacking stats aren't there. That he's running the ball a decent amount with no tackle breaks, hardly any offloads. So if any of those games come along, then he could obviously improve his scoring as well. So that's Keary on that one. Definitely a solid option at a cheaper price. Joey Manu. Let's move to the centres and the fullbacks now. So we've got Joey, we've got Ruben Garrick, we've got Dylan Edwards, Jaden Campbell, potentially Walsh if you wanted to, and then Xavier Savage as potential guys to pick up this week. I've probably got them in that order. Joey Manu first, and then Garrick closely behind in terms of my priorities. And then we've got Dylan Edwards, Campbell, Walsh, and then Savage as a cash out. I think it's probably one of the only real good cash outs this week. We got, was it Weeks or Wicks? What's his name? Sorry, from I'm probably wrong. From Panthers, who's playing 6, who could potentially score okay as a cash out. But I think if we're going for cash outs, I think round 16, 17 are going to be those weeks that I think is going to be beneficial for those types of guys. Probably a little bit early to just pick up cash outs, especially when we have a few already. Peoples is there, Davy Moale, Vialea, who I forgot to speak about in the most recent team list video. How annoying is that for anyone that owns him? You hold him all this time and then he unfortunately gets injured heading into the 1 week you need him. So very much a pain. But anyway, let's finish this video off with Mr. Joseph Manu. So We saw what he did the back end of last year, especially through Origin. He got a couple of games at fullback when the boss was out. So round 13, they had the bye. Round 17, he played fullback and got a 63 with a try. Big run meters, 290. Tedesco didn't back up in round 14, so he got another round 18, sorry. So he got another 74, which is really, really cool. All right, so these are the games you want to look at. 59 when he played fullback in round 14 as well. Teddy didn't back up again. So Joey, I think you can get a bunch of fullback games out of him at the moment. He's owned by a small percentage in the top 5,000, only 6 in the top 100. So Joey at 622, I think he'll be priced around the 700k mark, come around 17. And from there, you're really just going to be holding him for the rest of the year. As the dual position, he's going to be one of the top scorers in the center position, around that Joey Ewan Aiken kind of mold, probably a little bit higher than him potentially. So I think Joey's high on my priority list this week as a pickup, and I think he should be for you as well. Garrick, I think, is also a great option, considering he's going to be playing fullback for the rest of the year. I just really was excited with what he did last week, and obviously the week before on the wing got the 2 tries, but now he's at fullback. You saw obviously earlier on the year, he didn't do incredibly well, but a low score of 34 is what you're looking for in terms of consistency out of a wing fullback. If we can get him around the 45 average, which I think he can do, you see obviously last week was really, really cool. You know, he had the 1 try saver, the 1 try assist, but generally other than that, he had a bunch of tackle breaks, a bunch of offloads, and the 220 run meters. So if he can get anywhere near that over the next bunch of weeks with some tries and with some try assists as well, then he could average somewhere around that 45 to 55 for the rest of the season. So I definitely think Garrick's a solid option. Manu has more of the runs on the board in terms of being a keeper for the last bunch of years, whereas Garrick was a keeper last year with how good they were going, the amount of tries, the amount of goal kicks he was getting was obviously a solid option. So he's my second best option that has no dual position. That's the only thing with Garrick there. All right, 2 players to go through. If you are enjoying this, guys, if you're new, hit subscribe. I really appreciate that. And like this video. Dylan Edwards with 570k. Just think he's slightly below these guys, just in terms of his fantasy output. He's someone that can get the mid-30s, the 20s there, which he has a bunch this season. And the odd game where he gets the 250, 290 meters, the odd try and a try assist, and he can do really well. So I just think he's slightly below those guys that I just spoke about. So up to you whether you want to go for Dill. He's obviously going to have to step up in these games when they have a bunch of their players out and potentially a few of them not backing up heading into round 14 and 18 as well. So that's Dylan Edwards. And the last one, Jaden Campbell, I think he's slightly below Dill, just with his potential as a fullback. We've obviously got a few decent games here, 62, 62, and a 43. If you can average somewhere around the mid-40s, then he's going to be worth it for you. Make a tiny, decent amount of cash, 50 to 100k, and some decent scores for you. And obviously a bit of a pod if you want that. But Joey Manu, I think, is the best just because he has the dual position. He's done it before at fullback, and the Roosters are kind of getting on a bit of a roll right now. So that's the video, guys. Obviously a pretty long one. I really hope you enjoyed it, got a lot out of it. There's plenty of things to think about. And then, planning in towards round 14 and heading into round 17 as well. Plenty to talk about. The next video, we're going to be going through all your teams. So I hope that, you've all gone through this video, learnt a lot, worked out a bit of a plan over the next few weeks, and then, analyzing your teams and going through that just builds on that knowledge. And we just learn a lot. That's the goal in here. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll catch you in the next one, guys. See you later.